There are 1,001 launch methods out there. And how do you know which one to pick? I've done over 40 launches and made over 18 million US dollars in the last 10 years with launches. And I'm going to share with you my favorite launch method that works as well for beginners as for those who have been launching for many years. Let's first talk about the 3 main launch methods that are out there: a 5-day challenge, 3-day event, and 1-hour webinar. Let's start with a 1-hour sales webinar. This is by far the most popular launch method. You run a promotion, organic and paid, to one webinar, and in 60 minutes, it's done and dusted. The downside with a 1-hour webinar is that you have very little time to engage with your audience for them to get to know you. And if you're not super experienced at hosting sales webinars, it is very likely that you will fail with this method. In 1 hour, you have to introduce yourself, teach something of value, and present your offer. So let's say your introduction is 15 minutes, including saying hi to your audience and getting everyone to join on time. Then 30 minutes teaching something highly valuable that makes people excited about finding out about your offer. And then at minute 45, you start to present your offer. And then in 60 minutes, it's over, and people who have questions, they stay on longer, so you can add another 30 minutes or so to answer questions. So at the end of the day, you might end up doing a 90-minute webinar, but most people leave after 60 minutes. So it's super important that you make your offer before the hour is over. It's a lot to do all of this in 60 to 90 minutes. And for someone not super experienced, it's a lot of stress. Today, I do this like drinking water. I could do this every day, even unprepared. But actually, my first launch was an hour-long webinar, and my first launch was a failure. So I don't recommend 1-hour sales webinars to beginners, and even not really to seasoned launchers. There is, of course, exception to this rule. There are exceptions to all rules. If I'm selling a really low-priced offer, then I would typically pick a webinar because I don't need more time to present my offer and convince my audience, although we are not in the convincing business. And if I have a super warm audience and I want to introduce an offer that I know people are excited about, then I might pick a 1-hour sales webinar, but otherwise not. Let's talk about 5-day challenges. This is by far the most popular launch method by beginners. You host daily live sessions where you teach a small piece of content. You can have an additional Q&A in the afternoon if you want. And then on day 5, you have a webinar. The downside with a 5-day challenge is that people are often expected to do some homework, and a lot of people don't want to do any homework, and therefore they may not show up for the following days. There's also a lot of moving pieces to host these teaching classes, to do the Q&A, and do a webinar. So in 5 days, you have 5 pieces of content, not too long, not too short, maybe 15 minutes or so. You don't want to give your audience too much to work on, but you need to give them something of value. Otherwise, they are not inclined to show up for the next day. There is a drop-off from day to day. But if you create engaging content with some cliffhangers so that people are eager to show up the next day to learn the next piece of content, you will need a community to host your 5-day challenge, typically a Facebook group, to engage people between the sessions. If you host a Q&A every day, then do it at the same time every day as not to confuse people, and be ready to answer your own questions in case no one shows up and asks you a question. And finally, on day 5, as I said, you host a webinar, and you have to set up your webinar in a way that you can assume that some people will not have been attending the other days. So you kind of have to do a little bit of a recap, and for those who attended all the other days, you have to do something new for them. So you have to kind of have 2 different pieces of content, a recap and something new. So this is a lot of moving pieces. You have the teaching content, Q&A, and webinars, and a community. And this is a lot for someone who has not launched before, and therefore, I do not recommend this for beginners. Many of my students have tried 5-day challenges, and the success rate is so. It has been better to shorten it to 4 days. Typically, if you want to do it from Monday to Thursday and not do a webinar on a Friday, it's not super successful. But even with that adjustment, I do not recommend challenges to beginners. So now let's talk about 3-day events. As you can guess from my excitement, this is my favorite, absolute favorite launch method. 3 days gives you just enough time to get to know your audience and for them to get to know you without it being too short or too long. Instead of giving out assignments and expecting them to do some homework, I prefer to do my 3-day events workshop style, which means there are assignments, but we do them together. So there is no escape. And by them actually doing the assignments, there is transformation happening and they are seeing the benefit of joining my program that I will present later. So here's how it works. I typically run my 3-day events with a community, with a Facebook group, because I want to interact with people before, during, and after the 3-day event. Because not everyone wants to join a Facebook group, and there's less and less people joining Facebook groups nowadays, I make sure my 3-day event is set up in a way that people can attend even if they are not in the Facebook group. Super important. For my 3-day events, I typically create like a 3-part course, mini course, where I teach 1, 2, possibly 3 lessons per day. These are small lessons and people have to do the homework. And the lessons build on each other, but I try to do it in a way that even if someone attends on day 2, it is okay that they skipped day 1. Of course, it's better to do them all. What I teach is closely related to whatever I want to sell. So from day 1, I mention my program and say that I will open up doors very soon so those who are interested can get excited. Ideally also, I invite 1 or 2 guests onto my each day. And these are former students, graduates of the program that I am selling. So they are basically giving a life testimonial, but they are doing it in connection to whatever I'm teaching. So each workshop is at least 2 hours. That's absolute minimum for me to be able to do assignments and have people actually do it there with me and to invite the guests. I often even go above, especially when Q&A. I have Q&A every single day. It can go up to 3 hours. But I try to close it at the 3-hour mark so that people don't drop off like flies before I'm finished. There is, of course, a drop-off from day 1 to day 2. But typically day 2 and day 3 are stable, so I'm seeing similar attendance rate. You can also incentivize people to show up by having maybe a show-up bonus. And those who are eager, those who are already into your content on day 1, they will come back for day 2 and day 3. So on day 3, I make the actual offer and have a fast action bonus. The bonus is typically 24 hours, so that it gives people enough time to think about it, to talk to their spouse, to sleep on it and come back the next day, and they are still considered fast action takers. Open card is 6 to 7 days, and that gives me enough time to share more testimonials, do 1 or 2 Q&A sessions. And if the program is in the higher price category, it also gives me enough time to do sales calls or have a team that does sales calls. With a 3-day event, you can easily have a 5-figure launch, 6-figure launch, 7-figure launch, and multiple 7-figure launch. If you want to learn how to use a 3-day event in your next launch, then you can get on the waitlist for our signature program called Launch and Sell. If you like this video and you want to learn more about launches, then check out 3 stages of a successful product launch. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that more people like you find this video and can benefit from it. I'll see you in the next video.